Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution
Each week we interview top artists.
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's origin story.
Dave Krugman, welcome to Origin Stories.
Roger, thank you so much for having me. It is a great honor and privilege to be here with you.
Thank you, man. I feel like we've been here before, and we have, and I think we've just had a lot of quality conversations in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
Yeah, but now we're here. We're officially here. And of course, we officially begin with the question, and that is, what is your origin story?
I think if I talk about my origin story, it has to start with my love for photography. I always felt the kind of gravitational pull of a creative lifestyle ever since I kind of became aware, like consciously. My father, every night he would read to my sister and I, he'd read books, and the experience of hearing a story, either what, like if you're reading it or it's being read to you, kind of like I've always thought of it as how like it's a scaffolding for your imagination to build upon. So I think ever since those really early days, like literally as far back as I can remember, I was building worlds in my head, in my imagination, like whole scenes and characters. And he would read a lot of fantasy books, and I just always loved to, see how my mind would construct these worlds around such simple stimulus as text. And I would draw too. I would have, this little notebook with me, and I would draw these little pictures and while I was listening, and it would drive my sister crazy. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but to me, I was like expressing this kind of creative urge I had to like put stuff out into the world. But as time went on, I kind of realized that I wasn't very good at drawing. And, when I got a little bit older, and my, both my grandfather and father are like intense hobbyists, photographers, I was exposed to a lot of that technology. And then I kind of just slowly became completely enamored with the technology of photography. And, I'll get much deeper into that as we talk, I'm sure. But there was one moment that is so distinct in my mind. And I was at summer camp, and I went to go sign up for a woodworking class. And I get there and I was a little late. And like, oh, sorry, there's too many people in the class, but you should go check out the photography darkroom next door. So I walk and I knock on this little shed door, and, someone says, just a minute, because, you can't just open the door whenever, because it's this whole like delicate process with light. And so I'm waiting out there, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to expect. And they open the door, and I'm just like, there's this room just washed in red light. And I walked in, and I saw somebody, putting this blank sheet of paper into this liquid, the developer. And then all of a sudden, like magic, a photograph emerged from that paper. I was like, the silver gets polarized and washed away. And that moment was like, I was like, I feel like I've been chasing that moment for my entire career. So if I trace it back to one instant where I knew I wanted to be a photographer, that would have to be it.
Do you recall, or did you stay long enough and look long enough to see what that literal photograph was that was being taken out?
So I don't remember specifically what that one was, but I remember my first one that I did.
Yeah.
And that's really the memory I'm thinking of more, is I took a picture of a rowboat, and I still have it actually. And I'll try to find a copy of that. That'd be crazy if I had that. But it was like a picture of a rowboat, like by the lake, that I'd gone out earlier that day. We shot it, we developed the film ourselves, and then we made the prints ourselves. And it was like alchemy. It's like this crazy chemical process that, most photographers today don't even touch that part of photography. They're mostly either shooting digital, or they're using a lab to do all their processing. I mean, even now I use a lab to do my film processing. It's just more time effective for me. But I encourage anybody interested in any sort of photography to try to get that experience at least once in your life, because it really shows you kind of where we started and how far we've come.
Where my mind goes, and we're going to get there. We don't have to go there right now, but from a rowboat to ALLSHIPS is pretty classic in my mind.
That's an amazing and perfect comparison. And yeah, that's definitely territory we need to explore.
That's why I love origin stories. We get to go back. We get to go back. Okay, so you see this magic photo. Now, how long does it take you from when you see the magic to actually executing the rowboat?
I mean, that was like all within the same day.
Okay,
Yeah.
so right
Yeah,
then and there.
It was like this camp course, and so all we were doing is just like fun activities all day. So maybe it was like maybe they gave me a roll of film and the camera, and I went out for a day, and then the next day we were able to actually develop that photos.
Is it game on from that day forward?
It was more like it planted a seed in me.
Mm-hmm.
And that seed steadily grew throughout high school. I also took some high school photography darkroom classes, making pinhole cameras and experimenting with different techniques. And then that's kind of when digital photography started to emerge as like a practical way to make photographs. I think we take that so much for granted today. Like every phone, like there's like 20 cameras in my apartment probably just because of phones and tablets and my computers. But when I was that age, my first digital camera was like 1 megapixel or something.
Mm-hmm.
And now my iPhone is like 12 mega, I can take beautiful photos with just my default, what's in my pocket. So I think we kind of always gloss over the fact that digital photography is such a new thing. So then I started to get like really into, I was like taking macro pictures of like bumblebees and like, flowers, and getting like really close up shots, like almost like microscopic shots. And I was really interested in cameras as a way to reveal more about the world. Mm-hmm. Like even the act of freezing a moment in time is a technology that is, less, it's a very modern development that we're even able to do that, to render reality in such, realism. Mm-hmm. And I like to think of it as like pulling a slice of the river of time, and then you can like stand there with that like a microscope slide and really pour over that moment and those juxtapositions and those overlaps and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I love about it, is it's allowed us to kind of have almost like a side chain on time, right? And I'm really fascinated by like the similarities between blockchain and photography, like around, blockchain is this like time-based immutable archive of transactions, right? And photography is also, much like that. And in both cases, there's kind of this value driven by consensus and like our collective belief in something. So that's another area I really love getting into. But my career and like when photography became more than just a hobby to me was after I studied psychology at Boston University. Mm-hmm. So I went to Boston University. My parents were always very supportive of my creative journey, and like they gave me all the resources to get to where I am today in terms of like encouraging me and helping me and not telling me to be scared of a creative life. But the rest of society was not as gracious. They're very much like, you never make any money. That's not art isn't actually profitable or whatever. People have all these misconceptions that it's not, that there's no security in this, and that's just not true. And I think that every time there's another advancement in communications technologies, visual content becomes even more essential. So I started to see what was happening with iPhones and social networking. And, to me, the iPhone coming out is like when the printing press was invented. But prior to the printing press, like a book was an extremely valuable commodity. And there were hand scribed copies of things. And usually if you had a book, you were a very wealthy family to have something that was a signal of such excess, right? And 99% of people were completely illiterate. Mm-hmm. So now what phones have enabled, and the fact that by default your communications tool has a kind of visual component, the ability to capture and share your world. Now we have visual literacy is just skyrocketing at an all-time high. And even words themselves are visual symbols. We read words in chunks, not in like a sequence of letters. So our ability to communicate with each other has never been so fluid. And the best thing about photography and visual art is that it needs no translation. So we have this kind of global communication system based on the technologies that have developed in the past 10 or 20 years. And I'm just so excited for the potential that unlocks for the next generation of artists, my generation of artists, and everything we're seeing unfolding right now is just an added bonus to that kind of depth of exposure to visual art.
No pun intended. That's an interesting lens to look at things through. I don't know that I've ever quite thought about it that way in terms of the visual literacy as being driven directly by the iPhone and smartphones in general, and just that ready access to cameras all around us.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's going to give me some things to chew on post Origin Stories. Well, take us back to Boston University, right? You mentioned that that's really where it leapt off, and then you broke down some philosophy for us, which again I'm going to do some deep diving on later. Keep going from that point when philosophy tips you to photography.
So I said something about society kind of discouraging me from pursuing my passion, which is photography. And what I mean by that is that, like, I didn't think I could go to college for photography. I mean, obviously you can, there's art schools everywhere. But I'm also glad I didn't. And I'm not knocking on anyone who went to art school. I think that it's an incredible resource if it's something you can afford or want to do. But I got this unique situation where I got to stay in love with my craft. And then I got to learn something else. And that something else was actually what allowed me to succeed at my craft, because that something else was psychology. And I studied color theory, drugs and behavior, group psychology, abnormal psychology, kind of case studies on mob mentality, so many things. And the reason I bring up drugs and behavior is the one I'm referenced, probably the most helpful to my experience on social media. Because, I mean, we all know that these systems are designed by the best psychologists in the world, and they are designed off decades of, proven studies about people's addictions and behaviors and conditioning and, reward signaling and gratification and, market dynamics and blah, 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 blah. So in order to succeed in these online spaces, it really does help to have like a foundation of psychology and to understand the kind of bases, so I hope I got that right, of the underlying technology that is driving these network effects and changing the lives of artists all over the world for better and for worse. And it also helps you to avoid some of the worst pitfalls of these technologies, which I still struggle with, even being fully aware of everything that's going on and how manipulated my attention span is and everything like that. Even being aware, I still fall for it, which goes to show you how powerful these tactics are. A couple I'd just bring up really quickly is like every social app is blue, right? Blue branding, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The UI is heavily blue. The psychology of color is that blue is a very welcoming, kind of expansive color. It's my favorite color, one of them. I like more of a shade of teal, but that's neither here nor there. But blue is the color they use because it's like the color of the sky. It's the color of the ocean. It's the color of, it gives you this kind of sense of possibility and you're part of something. And then all the notifications are red, right? On every app. And it's not a coincidence, I think it'd be very weird if you opened an app and you had green notifications, right? And the reason is because red is, in our evolutionary environment, red was a color of alarm. It is how plants signal to us. It's how animals signal danger to each other. Like the most poisonous snakes have, like a coral snake or something like that, signal with these colors. And we evolved in an environment that we don't live in anymore. But our technology has taken us so far from that environment and so quickly that our evolution has not caught up yet. And so now we're in this different dance where we're evolving with our technology, and our technology is evolving alongside and because of us, but also it has been in turn affecting our evolution and how our behavior fits in. Point being is that all the mechanisms by which these companies succeed and massive groups of test subjects like us use them so much is because they're taking advantage of things from our original evolutionary environment, like color, group psychology, in groups, out groups, and everything like that. So that kind of helped me understand how to use these platforms in a way that I could amplify my message, which is one of everybody should be a creative, and everyone has a creative person in them, and they should embrace that curiosity and be that person. And I was able to kind of use those tactics to amass a very large following on Instagram, first of all. And I was able to kind of turn that into a career in advertising, content creation, community building. And now, to take the thread all the way through, now I understand a lot about how to survive and thrive in the world of Web3, because I think a lot of the same, practices and strategies apply in this space as well.
Go back to Instagram. So tie everything together in one beautiful thread as to what's the number one factor, all things considered, with the, I know one of your favorite words, right? Out the algorithm and all things Instagram and evolutionary, as well as your practice, your photography, and how you put yourself forward. What would be the number one factor as to why your following grew so big?
Community.
How so?
These tools. So think about the words communication and community, right? Those words are inextricably intertwined, right? So there is no community without communication. These tools are the most efficient and fastest way to do mass communication from an individual to a group. Now, if you can lead with this idea of, I'm going to build community, that means that you become the hub in a network. And if you're the hub in a network, a lot of the information and transactions and relationships in that network flow through you. So I recognized in around 2011, 2012, that if I could do what I loved, which is encourage other people to get involved with photography and creativity and embrace their curiosity, which I actually genuinely just want to do. But if I could do that and be a resource for people and commit my time to helping onboard them to this new technology and new way of communication and life, I just knew that not a minute of that time I put into that would be wasted, because I would be paid by the transactional flow of this massive network that was just starting to build. And we know, because of network effects, if you're early to one of these networks, then you're a hub in that early network. As that network scales, all you scale too automatically, because every connection that you've helped make, all roads lead to Rome or whatever, right? So I think it's really interesting that we truly are in a many sums game now, because the bigger the network grows, the more you can do with the network. And if you help onboard somebody to something, like, let's say, let's use NFTs as an example. I've onboarded a ton of photographers to NFTs. Now, when they go out and thrive and succeed, I don't get jealous at all. I get very happy, and I see it as a win for the whole system. And if the system wins, then I win, because I'm in the system and I was, early to this idea. And, that's how I feel about, that's why I'm so excited about what's happening with Web3, because Web3 is like a formalized, trustless value layer on the same systems that I've been enjoying working in my whole life. And to that, just to speak a little deeper to that part, is that before cryptocurrencies were a thing, or, in the early days, what we had on social media was, I'd call it like community capital and social currency. And, I have an exchange rate for my Instagram presence. and I can exchange it for USD. Like I have contracts that are like, you know, you give us X out of your capital, which is your reputation and your place in your community and your ability to write and communicate and make photographs, and we'll give you X amount of USD, right? So there's already this exchange system happening, but it's very sloppy, it's very messy. There's no standardization of value and stuff like that. So I'm so excited to see, you know, what's happening with the Ethereum blockchain, where it's like, oh, now we actually like have this native currency for digital artists. And that's why I'm like always, when people, I don't think anybody should be betting against Ethereum, because like that is really what I see this as, is like the formalized currency of a decentralized state. And that decentralized state is kind of, you know, populated by the most forward-thinking artists on the planet right now. And it doesn't, there's no borders, there's no, you know, it's only governed by the system of blockchain itself. And I think it's exciting, and I'm very bullish on the space.
Very bullish. Well, you know, one of my fascinations is how artists really did lead NFTs forward, did bring NFTs up to a whole new level. That will forever be fascinating to me because of how far this technology will go, how many things this technology will do in the future, right? NFTs are going to eat the world, but artists really did lead it up a level.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to quote somebody, Colborne Bell of Museum of Crypto. I love the way he speaks about the space, and I've heard him talk many times. And one thing that he said, I don't know if it was him directly or it came from the Museum of Crypto account, but it sounds like a quote from him, so I'll credit it to him for now. It was, NFTs are the hack that brings the most creative people in the world onto the blockchain. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I think that, I mean, I don't know if anybody knew how quickly NFTs would be here to stay. I think even back in like February, we're like, "Ooh, I hope this isn't just a fad." You know, some of us. I was very bullish and thought this isn't going anywhere. But what we're seeing right now as we have this conversation is like, it's not slowing down, right? Not at all. And what's interesting about that to me is that one of the main things that communities need is culture. And of course, there's always been blockchain culture, but it was very like prohibitive for people to get involved. There's a huge technical barrier to entry to be a part of that community. But what's happening now is that as artists are getting increasingly frustrated with Web 2 paradigms and increasingly encouraged by Web 3 paradigms, you're seeing this huge flood of culture coming into the space. And that makes the community stronger. And if the community is coalesced around the Ethereum blockchain and all these other blockchains and everything, the value of those blockchains is like, you know, just astronomical, because it has all this culture embedded in it. Just like the same way that a traditional financial market also has a traditional art market that is interwoven in a way where like the two things cannot exist without each other. Like there's no, you know, I can't think of a good example, but like there's no Jeff Koons without a hedge fund, right?
Right.
And so if the goal of cryptocurrencies is to build a kind of an alternate economy, then the goal of NFTs would be to build, you know, the corresponding art market. And we don't have to play in the same arenas as the you know, gatekeeping galleries and everything like that. We can build our own world, and I think that's what we're so excited about. It's like we have our heroes, like our X copies and Coldies and everybody. Yeah, so I just like I throughout the pandemic, you know, this is probably the worst year financially for me as an artist until NFTs. And I was always thinking in the darkest days of what we all just went through, like, man, like what will be the upside of this, if any? Like what will be the silver lining? And I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams that NFTs would explode in the way that they have, and that they would change artists' lives faster than, a decade of social media did for me.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible.
Let's go back to your photography.
Sure.
Take us through some influential photographs in your journey. Take us anywhere you want to go. We went to the canoe. The canoe started it all. And then where
it was
do
a
you want to
rowboat.
go?
It was a rowboat, to be fair.
Sorry.
I just said boat, so you're good.
All right. Rowboat. Works better for all ships anyway. All right. Take us to the next one.
It's a really good question. I've had a couple moments in my career that really changed things. One thing I did after college, I moved to New York City, staying with my uncle, and was just like I was walking around Washington Square Park with my camera, and I was going up to strangers and trying to charge them $5 to take their picture. I was such an anxious person, and like I was pretty shy when I moved here. But that was me like just trying to figure out, I was like, how can I make money with photography? And then I was really lucky to get a job in the studios of Annie Leibovitz, who is like an incredibly iconic photographer here in New York. And that was through a family friend named Alex Verhav, and he runs an incredible retouching operation here in New York called Silhouette Studio. And that showed me like, oh, this is what a commercial photography operation looks like. Like I thought I would just be this lone wolf out in the streets, just like click, click, making my art. But then I realized, oh, this is like a huge industry. And then it dawned on me that like, oh my God, every single piece of visual content that we look at, which is almost everywhere, literally almost everywhere, was made by some artist of some form, whether it's an illustration or a photograph or a logo, or I'm like looking at hundreds of different pieces of art around me right now, just from labels on things. And a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my gosh, like of course I can be a photographer if I want to. And that was really helpful to me. And then Instagram came out. And that's when I started to see like the potential of the network effect and community building and stuff like that. And so, I did this project helping the Metropolitan Museum of Art bring Instagram influencers into the space. And if you want to look it up, it's called Empty Met.
Okay.
And together with people from the institution, we started to do this project where we would go in when there was nobody there and make our own art inside the institution. It was like, Night at the Museum or something like that. And that article that got written up in an article and got a lot of traction. And that like really helped me get my ideas about social media into like the mainstream in a way that I started to get a lot of attention as a photographer. And my following went from like, 3,000 followers to 30,000 followers overnight. So that's a series of images, a very convoluted way to answer that question, is that kind of series and body of work that we created there was like extremely impactful in my life. I'd say the next time that happened, would be, I took a picture of the 2017 eclipse and Instagram, the account, reposted that photo and tagged me with my story about it. And that was another huge influx of followers for me. I got like 40,000 followers. And, once you get to a certain level, like you just start getting offers to work with brands. And then it kind of is just like this snowball that builds momentum as it goes. And that I was kind of able to ride that momentum through until now. And then I got a job at BBDO New York. Was able to work with a great guy there named Matt McDonald, who we did all these photo campaigns for AT&T on Instagram. And then I've always just kind of tried to stay at the bleeding edge of technology and like identify new opportunities for creatives, because the only thing that's guaranteed in life is change. Like everything is going to change. This world will evolve into something new. And I think all the interesting stuff is happening at the fringes.
One of the things I find so fascinating is your influence in and around the NFT space before actually tokenizing your first NFT. How'd that happen?
Well, I actually tokenized very early, and not a lot of people know this, but there's some Dave Krugman film scans out there.
Whoa.
And a little alpha for anybody looking to pick something up. And I have to give a big shout out to Franklin Fitch and Vlad Ginsburg at Block Party.
Mm-hmm.
I actually minted some film scans back in October 2020.
Whoa. On Block Party?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they sold out. And I don't know if there's any on the secondary, but they really helped me understand what was going on in this world. And then when I I kind of minted and just was like, oh, this is cool. And then I started to understand like the vast implications of what's happening with Web3. And then I like went into like more of a strategy mode and was like, okay, this is not something that's fleeting. This is going to be here for a long time. It's a marathon. How do I want to pace myself? What is my real role in the community? And how do I move forward this year? And my main takeaway from those conversations I had with myself was I need to take my time. And also, this is kind of a great place to bring up a few things. One, the first thing I want to bring up is Jay and Silva, who I know you've had on the podcast. Live stream.
Absolutely, yes. He was here with Thank You X. They were together.
Oh, incredible!
I'm sure at some point in the future, maybe each one will do an individual. But...
So both of those guys had a profound impact on me very, very early. But let's start with JN.
Yeah.
So Jay and Silva, who I consider to be truly like a brother to me, like is just an incredible pillar of support in my life, like both as an artist, a friend, just an incredible person. As early as like 2017, he was telling me to get into crypto. He was just like, oh, dude, this is such a cool, interesting community. Like there's so much going on. You love technology. You'll love this. And I kind of just kept bouncing off of it. Like I'd buy a little like Bitcoin and then I'd just get wrecked and be like, what is this? Like, this feels like I'm gambling or like, I just didn't get it. And I really wish I did because he explained it so well. And then he kept kind of, bringing it up again, and then bringing it up and bring it up. And when NFTs came about, that's when things started to really click for me. So like straight up through his guidance, I was able to make the connection between like a token and then like art markets. Because like when it was just tokens and just trading coins and altcoins and stuff like that, like I just didn't understand the economics of it or how it like, I'm like, wait, you're making something from nothing, or like, what's this backed by, or blah, blah, blah. And it was just so over my head that whenever I approached it, I kind of bounced off. But then once I was like, oh, people buy, like if there's an edition of 100 pieces, that's like 100 coins.
Yeah. And
then you can have like, ownership, you can have fractional ownership. You can like, it totally clicked. And I had to call him. This is like in early, like October 2020, right before I minted my own. I called him and like spoke to him for an hour and I was like, I'm sorry. You were right. I'm sorry. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm so thick-skulled. I could not understand what you meant by the implications here. And from that moment, I was all in. And because I was all in and he was able to bring me into all these great communities and he introduced me to so many interesting people, I was able to like take an approach over the winter that was like very paced, very slow. And I could focus a lot on this project that I had started in March of 2020 called ALLSHIPS. And the ethos behind ALLSHIPS is this kind of many sums thing that we were talking about earlier, which is like, you winning is not a threat to me. You winning means I can win too. You winning means we win. And that's my idea of community. So I decided that like, you know what, if I'm going to enter the space, I'm going to take it seriously. Like I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and I'm going to collect from artists and learn that way. I'm going to write about artists that I love. I'm going to give them a platform. I'm going to give them more of a voice than they can do in one tweet on social media. And I said, I'm going to lead with that. And I'm going to take my time moving forward with my own art, because I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't rush in a way where I was unprepared. I wouldn't make mistakes that I could have avoided by being patient. And then I could really think about what I wanted my on-chain legacy to be. And now I'm in a spot where, you know, I think that I'm exactly where I want to be. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for Super Rare, like their efforts to build the community and to not like the amount of foresight to not rush into like when Nifty Gateway is like printing millions of dollars with open editions, the amount of restraint for a platform like Super Rare to not like at least take some version of editions or models or something, a model like that is pretty profound to me, because that's leaving a lot of money on the table, but it's also preserving, you know, the art market that they originally wanted to build.
Yep.
Which is this like very like highly curated one of one like gallery of so I say all this to say that I was very eager to be a Super Rare artist. And so I, you know, it's hard to get in. So I was like, just kept building. I kept focusing on other people in the community and elevating other people in the community, because that's really what I truly love to do. And then when the time was right, like I finally was able to present a project to them that they liked, and I was able to get in, and I made my first sale to 33 NFT, and who has been incredibly supportive in every aspect of my journey here. And I'm just excited to continue to participate as an artist now, and simultaneously try to juggle and find the time to build out my ALLSHIPS ecosystem. You know, we have a podcast, we're writing articles every week. I want my team to expand, you know, trying to find creative ways to raise funding. One thing is 20% of my Super Rare sales are going to an artist fund, and I'm kicking off Genesis bids for artists who don't have, you know, as many resources as I've been privileged enough to have over my career. And then, you know, I'm also using the rest of those funds to offset my costs for the development of ALLSHIPS and building, you know, doing events. We've had some parties this summer that have been super fun. And I'm just going to keep focusing on the same thing I did in kind of 2011 and 2012, which is like focus on the strength of the bonds within the community and being helpful and being a bridge between those trying to learn and those you've learned from. And as long as you do that and really stick to your core values, like the community will carry you on the same wave. And that's really like something I fundamentally believe in.
I love ALLSHIPS for a lot of reasons, but you really brought together art, philosophy, and it's a very interesting brand. Visually, it's a very interesting brand. Then when you dig deep and you read, it remains, and it becomes even more interesting as you go down the rabbit hole. Talk a little bit about that, about literally taking your vision for what you wanted it to be, and then getting the design done. Let's start there.
Yeah, so I ran into an artist in a coffee shop a couple of years ago, and we started following each other on Instagram. And he was also like a coder type. His name's Peter Laxalt. Sorry, I said that right. And I always wanted to build this community, because I feel like at this point, building a platform on another platform, like if you're trying to build up a huge presence on Instagram, first of all, it's insanely difficult to do at scale now because of the size of the user base. Everyone's attention has been fragmented. But also, you're building on land you don't own. It's like, imagine if you spent 5 years building a house, and then the landlord's like, oh, we don't have a road that comes to this house anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we blocked your driveway because we wanted we wanted people to go to a brand or a celebrity more, right? That's what's happening on Instagram right now. They're prioritizing types of content that I'm not interested in. And so I kind of could feel this like very powerful asset that I had built starting to kind of just like shrink. And I'm like, to use another ship metaphor, I was like, well, I'm on this ship. I better jump to like, I'm going to try to jump to something else before, in 5 years, I think those types of accounts won't be as useful because you won't be able to reach as many people. So I decided to like fully throw myself into creating my own land to build on. And that's what ALLSHIPS.co is. So that's the philosophy. And, I'm inspired by like hacker culture, early video games. I was a Nintendo kid growing up playing Nintendo all the time, like just pixel art.
Yep. All of those things come through so strongly, by the way.
Yeah, and
everything you just said.
Yeah, so I say this to say that like, even this shirt, this ALLSHIPS shirt I'm wearing right here.
You knew we were getting there. We had to get to the shirt.
Yeah, so I wore it. Yeah, and it says there's space for everyone, which is like it's like a play on words, but it's also like, yeah, come join us. We got room for you.
Wait, and then the back and the sleeve. We got to do the whole thing. If we're doing the shirt, we got to do the whole thing.
Yeah. Here, I'll show the back.
Yep.
And then the sleeves say forever forward.
Yeah. And the back says all ships rise with the tide.
All ships rise with the tide. Immerse yourself in what you love. So I started that and kind of just took all of my like influences throughout my early creative life and been like, I want to build the internet we were promised in like early 90s movies, right? Where it's like this kind of like hacker type terminal and like you can kind of just like, even the site is like hackable. You can like type commands in and change all the colors and everything like that.
I love that there's the command line at the top with the blinking cursor,
Yeah, exactly. And that actually works. You can reset the background color and everything like that. And eventually you'll be able to like play these weird games that unlock NFTs, and that's a whole nother that's coming soon. But yeah, we're kind of just like in a bit of a development backup for some other features I'm working on. But, I think that social media was a great way to gain large audiences. And it was a good deal when we signed it. When the only way to distribute your information to wide audiences was to sign these arrangements that are like, you can distribute all my content for free.
Yeah.
But what actually makes these companies like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, what makes them valuable is the communities that populate them and the content that those communities create. And so like, I think what Web3 represents is an opportunity for us to renegotiate our relationship with the internet. And it's at the very least, it's leverage to renegotiate.
Sure.
Facebook just announced like $1 billion fund to like help support creatives. I think, maybe too little too late, but we'll see. And at the very most, Web3 represents an entirely new way for us to value our community capital and creative relationships and stuff like that. So
one of the things I've been really fascinated about is breaking down the literal value of a social media post, to your point, where the deal was good at the start, and then past a certain point of broader company growth, it's very clear that it becomes a raw deal over the long haul. And the example I used was the YouTube video, Charlie Bit My Finger. You remember when that was sold?
Yeah, as an NFT.
Then, right? As sold as an NFT, and then they took the video down. And I was obsessed with this exercise of what was that video worth? I mean, it's one of the most prolifically viewed videos ever. But what was it worth? And you can use these proxies to get to the ad revenue, the distribution of it. But then there's this whole, and by the way, the answer was many, many millions of dollars. But then if you go into a whole nother layer of it, what is the most viral content worth from a company growth perspective? There's like a whole nother layer of value there that's untapped. Anyway, the entire point that I'm trying to make is just doubling down on that over that span of time, what you're providing to that broader company, to that broader network outstrips what you receive from it.
Yeah, at a certain point, yeah. And I don't think these companies are going to go anywhere. I just think that what they are or should be used for is community building and marketing. And beyond that, like, I don't think they should be tied to the way you extract value from the internet, because that puts you in a position of it becomes very quickly a zero-sum game.
Right.
Because you are actually competing for a limited you're actually competing for a limited resource, which is some people's attention. So that becomes like this race to who can optimize for the algorithm the best. And then that gets into the sentence that I love saying, which is, don't let an algorithm hijack your creative voice. And I've seen it happen. And I've fallen for it myself. Like, I've let the algorithm narrow me into like one type of thing many, many times. And then it's hard for me to go outside of that and share something different, because I think I literally see the numbers go down. And I'm like, well, if I do that and I keep repeating that, then I'll end up with nothing. But I think the interesting art is when you push things forward. And again, back to my earlier comment, like, the interesting things are at the fringes. But the things that rise up to the top of social media are inherently like more bland and more pop culture in the average. Like, so it's like very like the content that like rises to the top of the algorithms is like the least challenging, right? Or it's like the most controversial. And I don't think either one of those things is good necessarily to like dictate what our culture looks like. I think that we should kind of let people play and experiment and not have to make creative sacrifices so that they can stay relevant in a like a very like cutthroat system that we've removed all human editorial from. That's the problem, is like we've given up our editorial autonomy to robots and then we told those robots that what you need to optimize for is whatever keeps people the most engaged, which is usually violence, anger, controversy, and some of the darker parts of our society. So I'm just like very interested in how Web3 can like at least counter some of the problems of Web2.
Your restraint, and again, I guess it goes back to your philosophy, but your restraint, now that I'm just sitting here with you talking this out, charting the many, many months, going back to the Block Party that I actually admittedly was not aware of, right? Your original release on Block Party back in October of 2020. I think that fact makes it more incredible to me, the restraint that you showed along the way. The fact that you were able to step back, and again, it's your philosophy, maybe it's digging deep into how Instagram and different social networks work. But the fact that when this thing was blowing up in January, February into early March, the fact that you were able to still largely, and we're going to get to your xsullo collaboration, we have to go there.
I was hoping.
We have to. You largely were able to step back.
Yeah.
Let things run their course and really dictate when and where you wanted to step in fully.
Yes, and that's exactly how it felt. And I'll tell you, man, I was in agony.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody that I like to get in the mix, and I like to be like one of the people doing it, and I feel like right now in this moment, photography is about to have its big moment. I really do.
100%.
I was on Twitter today, and I like tweeted out this morning. I woke up, had a cup of coffee, and I was like, something's in the air. Like, I'm really like I'm seeing some big sales. Something is happening with photography. And then I tweeted that, and it got a ton of, a lot of people agreed, and we're like, yeah. But then I just started getting tagged in all these other posts that were like major collectors and major players in the space being like, I think the photos are being slept on. Like, who do we talk to? And then people tagging me, and like I'm tagging friends and being like, okay, guys, like I really feel like this is a moment where we might see the dam break a bit, because photography, again, back to this idea of photography and blockchain, like these are immutable assets that are like, once you take a photo, it's there. And unless you're photoshopping it and editing it and chopping it up, like it's a moment of time that you cannot go back and change ethically, like, but it's also like we determine the value of what those cultural moments that we photograph by a distributed consensus. Like if I'm like, name a famous photo that I would know about, there's hundreds that you could name. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I know that photograph. These are little bits of the visual cortex of our collective consciousness. And for them to not have a moment in NFTs, it just seems ridiculous to me. It's absolutely coming. I'm curious as to how it will unfold. One thing I'm really intrigued about, and something that I have coming out soon, is like a wider collection. Because to me, all of this stuff that's happening right now is a reflection of our evolutionary environment and our literally hard-coded desire to gather resources. We're like, we are hunter-gatherers still. Because, just because we sit in these apartments with computers and stuff like that, it's only been, we're not that many generations removed from like, going around and like foraging for food, right? So this collecting NFTs is an abstraction of that gathering of resources and building communities and tribes, right? With cool cats and punks and bored apes. Is like people are tribalizing, and photography itself is that act of gathering. Like I'm addicted to going out and capturing moments, and then I have categories of moments, right? Like harsh light, like rainy shots. I have this whole collection of like rain puddles that I'm gonna do. And I have this project that I've been doing for 10 years called Secret Street, which is all iPhone photography. And I did it to show people that they didn't have to go out and break the bank and spend $2,000 on a camera. They could just get started right away, right? And now that project has evolved, and I have different things I collect. Like I collect people reading newspapers. I collect solo cars, like parked in places around the city. And I have hundreds and hundreds of these cars, right? And yeah, that's coming soon as like a nice like packaged NFT photography collectible project. And so all the collecting we do, I think, is rooted in this like super hardwired, an innate desire to like accumulate resources, whatever the resources of those days are. For us, it's not flowers and mushrooms and material to make bedding anymore, because we can buy those things. But it is collecting things that our society and our community holds in high value. And so that's kind of what's happening, I think, at scale across the internet right now.
I recall being on the streets of New York with you as you captured one of those cars.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder whether it will make the collection.
Yeah, we'll see. So I'm right now I'm in the process of going through 10 years. And I'm kind of grouping them in different traits. And it's really cool because instinctively I just captured them all from the exact same angle. So when you see them together, it's like you're like, oh, this is actually like pretty cool.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, now I'm invested. I'm invested in said collection because I was literally there watching you do your thing in the moment.
Well, you'll get the pre-alpha for sure.
Nice. Thank you. All right. So while I was not aware of Block Party, I was very aware of xsullo and Dave Krugman on Super Rare. How about you dive into one, xsullo, and how that relationship began, and then what you decided to do together?
Yes. So this is I love telling this story because this is one of those organic, just like two artists colliding in a really natural, organic way, and in Web 2, and then kind of taking that relationship into Web 3 and solidifying our legacy together. And I'm super proud of both of those pieces that we've created. So xsullo and I just was following him off Instagram. I used to do this thing on Instagram. Like, one thing that's important about me and my philosophy is like, I only want a platform if I can elevate others. So what I do on my Instagram a lot is I'll just go through the explore page and I'll find art I like and I'll post it to my stories and tag that artist. Like, go follow this person, go follow this person. And it's a great way to provide content to my followers who might want to find new stuff, but also to support artists and just be like, look at their stuff. Look at, so I don't know who found who first. I think I found xsullo, like, I don't know how long ago, on Instagram, and I just like posted him in my story. And I was like, dude, this guy's crazy cool work. I love it. And we started chatting over the years. We just were friendly online and supporting each other. He would always support my photos. I would support his drawings and his renders. And we actually did a collaboration on Instagram just for fun. So he took one of my Tokyo pictures and he put one of his characters like in the frame. It's this like cool bicycle, like cyberpunk bicycle, and it's like in one of my panning shots of Japan. And that did really well, like, on Web 2. Just like people were like, oh, this is so cool, like love to see the collaboration. And I've done that with a few artists over the years that are now in the NFT space as well, which is kind of exciting. But then I saw that he was on Super Rare, and then I started talking to him about NFTs after I had spoken so much to Silva about it. And I was like, wow, like photography is not really selling right now. This was in February. Like I think Silva was the only one who was doing anything with photographs at the time. And I basically was like, maybe we can take one of our collaborations like into this new world. And he was gracious enough. He was the one with the Super Rare account, and I wasn't yet a Super Rare artist. So he's like, yeah, let's make something and we can list it. So we had a meeting. We started kicking around ideas, and we had all these different ideas. And I'm not going to say any of them because they're really good, I think.
They still may come to fruition.
They still may come someday. But I started pulling videos for this idea we had. It's an unnamed idea right now. And I came across this time lapse I had made earlier in the year from this really rare view of the Flatiron Building from a friend's apartment. And it was this super like cyberpunk toned, and like I shot it with a slow shutter. So like all the cars were like streaks of light, and it was just very like, it represents everything I love about New York because it shows the pulse of like, I always think of New York as like a beating heart. And when you do a time lapse of like a intersection like that, like you see the blood flowing through the city. It's like this, it's this living thing. And then I think we just started talking like, wait, what if we made a world that only exists where our imaginations overlap? And thus Ecumenopolis Sector 1, New York City was born. And so he built this beautiful digital city with all these references to like Museum of Crypto Art, Ethereum, like Tesla, just all these like trending things that were happening during that time. And then we were like, you know what, a piece like this really deserves some good music. So we hired another one of our friends, Ollie Shannon, one of my favorite musicians in the world, to write a custom soundscape and score. So he made like the sounds of the city. He looked at like the lights and added, all these little, it's just like a deep, deep soundscape. So if you listen to that piece, please listen with headphones. And then, we listed that piece and it actually ended up selling for 20 Ethereum on Super Rare. So that moment actually gave me a little more time, I think, to plan and plot my own entry as like or re-entry as like a photographer. And I'll always be grateful for him being so inclusive of me as an artist. And he really set me up in the space in an incredible way, because then all of his collectors started following me. Those collectors I'm very close with now, and we're always talking, and they've been sharing my work and supporting me as an artist over the past months since that collaboration came out. And then we were like, you know what, let's do another one.
Yeah.
So we did Ecumenopolis Sector 2, which is Venice, Italy. And Venice, we chose Venice because it was very, Venice used to be the trading capital of the world. And I'm a big Dune fan, and like the idea of like spice trading, like, and what's happening with cryptocurrencies. And like one of the reasons Venice was such an effective trading hub was because it was a waterway, and most commerce was happening via shipping. So like it was much more efficient to exchange your goods in Venice than it was to like take them onto land and onto a dry dock and then, on a cart into the city. So they had this Venice had this advantage, which was the speed of the network, right? Of the canal systems that allowed goods and money and resources to flow more quickly. Kind of like how blockchain, like when I do a blockchain transaction and then compare it to my banking transactions, guess which money I see first? the blockchain.
Yep.
So that's another parallel that we're really interested in discussing. So we kind of embedded that into this artwork and did it again. And that one sat for like, 5 months and we didn't have a buyer. Keyboard Monkey actually made a really generous offer of 10 Ethereum, but xsullo and I discussed, and since the last one went for 20, we wanted to get a little closer to that. And then just the other day, I get a call from him. He's like, "Hey man, I've been talking to this collector and really want to make a deal for this next piece." And so we were able to get from Discerning Wino, great name by the way. We were able to get 17.314 ETH for that piece as well, which unlocks me in a way as an artist to have a little bit more freedom, to pour more resources into ALLSHIPS, to do what I can to make sure that some of that those resources flow back into the community I love. So like it's very surreal. And so that's been the relationship with xsullo, and he's one of my favorite artists in the world, and I'm just so honored to have that stuff on chain forever, because it's a huge part of my story in the space for sure.
The two of you make up this. You're two of the, I don't know, purest, most just good people. people that when I hang with and when I talk to, whether it's virtually or in person. I have not had the honor of meeting Nick in person yet, but we talked several times virtually.
I'm waiting for that day too, by the way.
Yeah, hopefully New York. Hopefully,
yeah.
But immediately at ease, immediately free-flowing dialogue, immediately deep conversation if it presents itself. So seeing the two of you do what you did twice, and now hopefully even more, because it sounds like there are more ideas percolating. That's a pairing, that's a collaboration that I would love to see live on for years, ideally.
I hope it does. And we definitely have plans. We're going to do more sectors. Ecumenopolis Sector 3 is in the works. And again, even on the second piece, Ollie is also a part of our team. So he does incredible custom score for Sector 2. And he'll be involved for the lifetime of the project as well. And because I think music still like really needs to have its moment as well with NFTs.
Yeah, I want to give the proper shout out there as well, because it's something that I overlook just because I know the two of you, and I don't have the pleasure of knowing him yet. But yes, absolutely a trifecta collaboration.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll send you some of my favorite tracks of his after this.
Please.
He's just like so talented.
Please do.
Love
Dave,
it.
ready to play a game?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, lightning round. Snap reactions, hot takes, couple words, sentence, couple sentences.
I'm ready.
If I say something that trips off a longer thought process, please feel free to break all the rules and go off into any tangent you wish.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Lightning round. Topic number 1, NFT.
I'd say artist empowerment.
Ethereum.
The value layer of the creative internet.
A camera.
Ooh. A camera is a master key.
A retina.
A lens.
And I'm going to break my own rules. I often do.
Yeah.
But I also recall we were on a New York City rooftop looking at a thin line of light as the sun set between two buildings. And we had a very interesting dialogue about what the eye could capture, what my eye could capture and perceive versus what yours would capture and perceive versus what a camera lens would capture and perceive. I haven't forgotten that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So the thing that this makes me think about is that the eyes are actually like an extruded part of your brain. And it's the only part of your brain that is actually outside of your skull, or like it has exposure to the outside of your skull. And this comes a lot from my experience with like psychedelics, where it's like our perception of reality and light and color and everything is like, it's very subjective, and it can be changed very easily. And our reality is like completely constructed, and that gives me just so much thought about how we create and present art. And the other thing I think we were talking about that night, which was a fascinating conversation, is like color is the wavelength of light. So as a beam of light hits different surfaces and reflects off different things, its wavelength is being affected. And so like color is just like the slowing and interruption of like light from whatever source it emanates from. And that always has really fascinated me and helps me think about when I photograph, like how I make photographs and what I can use, what I can put in front of me, what I can like, you know, how I can light someone's face by putting them next to a white wall, right? Because white reflects a lot and black absorbs a lot. So I think that was something we were talking about as well.
Reminds me, Bill Ellis and I, we have done, well, with a larger group, we did a whiskey roundtable. We keep talking about doing a part 2. I feel like we need to do a beer roundtable and go off into these deep philosophical conversations.
I would talk to you just for hours endlessly. So whenever you're ready, man.
Let's do it. All right. In present moment, within your origin story, back to your lightning round. And here we go. I'm going to throw some people at you now. J.N. Silva.
The opener of portals.
Ravi Vora.
Oh, just such an all-around good dude and multidisciplinary creative with an expansive imagination.
xsullo.
One of the nicest people I've ever met and one of the most unique creative talents. Like his style is so distinctive. I think it's like the goal of every artist is like, you should be able to see their piece and be like, that's a so-and-so. I would never confuse xsullo for anyone else. And nobody could even copy him in a way that would convince me. So
Made by Animus.
Oh, Made by Animus. Wow. Made by Animus is like, I want to say power moves. Like they're, shout out to Phil and JN. I think Made by Animus will be one of the biggest winning companies in the NFT space.
Couple sentences to describe Made by Animus for those who don't know.
Made by Animus is an artist collective that I'm an honor to be a part of. It's founded by J.N. Silva and Phil Yoon. And, you know, we're so early in this whole process and everything. And they have the tools, the resources, and the wherewithal to probably be the company that is able to bring in major brands and players from traditional spaces into this market in a way that is extremely crypto native and is community centric and kind of checks all the boxes for what it looks like to succeed in the NFT space.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm very excited about everything they're building. And I mean, we don't have time to get into everything, but a lot of the projects in the space that are succeeding have their influence and twist on it.
Yeah.
And I can speak from personal experience.
Well, our paths really crossed. Like I was aware of Dave Krugman, but our paths really crossed through Animus. Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I'm referring to is our collaborative work for your incredible project, the Artifacts project. And working with you and working on some of the writing and the strategy and the social contests we ran.
Yeah.
You know, that's an Animus Artifacts Venn diagram collision. And I'm just thrilled that it's led us not only to so many places, like us being actual in real life friends, but to this conversation right here as well.
You're right. You're right. Just it's getting on close to 3 months ago. Wow. Who knows? Could have been today, 3 months ago, collaborating on some of the early write-up. That's the one I'll never forget. Is you and me just sitting there and talking about what the mission was, what the brand was all about, and then pushing it forward into New York from there and then beyond. So
yeah, and it was what a thrilling way to meet too.
I agree. All right. Speaking of, you dropped the word community a little bit ago in reference to Animus. Let's continue that community in reference to ALLSHIPS. That's the next lightning round term, ALLSHIPS.
Symbiosis.
Super rare.
The first thing that comes up is like OG. It's like, I feel like OG. I've been lucky enough to spend time both online and in reality with a few people from the super rare team. And what astounds me most is their legitimate investment in the success of artists in digital spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they want artists to win.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of my conversations with everybody I've talked to there, they're never leading with like a how do we make the most money attitude at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, how do we build longevity? How do we build tools and resources for the community that help make this thing last?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't take it for granted. And it requires, work, dedication, commitment, sacrifice, to make sure that this space stays, as thrilling as it could be, and as it is. And whenever I meet a team or people, and I can just see through their words and more importantly their actions that their heart is in the right place,
Mm-hmm.
I know that they can't fail. And so that's, I'm very, that's a long one, but I'm just like pretty blown away with their presence in the space and how they've kind of ridden the roller coaster over the past year.
Very deserved. Dave, we're recording this on a weekday between 3 and 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you could teleport anywhere, could be New York, could be somewhere else, but the mission was this: you could bring any photography tool, but you have to pick one, land anywhere in an instant, have to pick a place, and you were tasked with capturing a photo with that device with no editing, and you had to mint it on the spot. Take us through your decision making.
I'd teleport to the moon.
Okay.
And I would take a photograph of the Earth with a telephoto lens.
You blew me away with the speed of that answer.
I mean, I'm just like, if I'm teleporting,
You went all in. I like it. You
Let's go
literally
far.
you broke outside the box. You broke outside the globe, literally.
Yeah, because I think that the astronauts must have a really incredible perspective, because I don't think there's anything more humbling than if you could see the whole Earth at once and be like, that's where, that car, like JN will love this if he ever listens to this podcast, beyond me flattering him constantly. He's a huge Carl Sagan fan, right? It's one of his heroes, and mine too. But that pale blue dot line where he's like, there it is, like a pale blue dot, and every war that's ever been fought, everyone you've ever loved, and everyone has lived their whole life and lived and died, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's all just on that one pale blue dot. And so all the little infighting and rudeness and attacking each other and horrible things like racism and bigotry and just such short-sighted selfish behaviors and everything, like it's just that all washes away when you realize the scale of what's happening and where we are, and the fact that we're here at all is a little bewildering. So yeah, I'd like to experience that. I don't know if I'm gonna.
Good answer.
I'm not gonna fly up with Bezos or anything, but if I could teleport.
Got two more for you.
Sure.
The last, chronologically, NFT artwork that you looked at and it made your jaw drop.
My jaw drops every day. I mean, this community is so talented. But I did think to myself today, xsullo's latest piece. It's like
Mm.
two like
Mm-hmm.
like people without skin in space hugging. I think it's called
The crossover.
the crossover. I literally thought in my head I was on super rare, like, and I'm just looking around and I was like, if I had the ETH, I'd buy that.
Uh-huh.
But I literally thought that in my head. But this is a good opportunity to also mention somebody, Ralph Grassetti. I think you have that piece that I'm gonna reference.
Go for it.
What's the name of it? It's
Speaking to my heart, Lady Justice.
Lady Justice. I think that Ralph Grassetti is the Michelangelo of the metaverse. He's like, you know, he's worked on some of my favorite games, like God of War, I think is one of the best games ever created. It's just at a level that is so far beyond anything I've ever seen that like he will be, you know, if all the NFT artists fell away and there was like 3 left that were actually like still succeeding and stuff, he'd be one of them. Because he's just like, he's got the goods, man. He's got the creativity. And even not even just the technical ability, which he clearly has, but like the conceptual ability. Like he has that other piece, like the first of all, Lady Justice with like you know, I hope you can like pull it up for this part or something like that. It's like this, the sword is like, he's like defending, it's like the woman defending the child from like this evil person or something like that. But the sword is like the Bitcoin handle. And then there's just beautiful like transition between, like, I think it's clay and gold or like marble and gold, like around it. And it's just like, how do you think, like, I don't know how you think of stuff like this. It's just so powerful. Like sculpture, poetry. And even the other one that was like the kid holding the POC cube.
Yes.
The old master, and he's like explaining
his generation's theme, and
I was just like
that interplay. So good.
So anyway, Ralph, if you're out there, keep it up. You're not, don't change a thing.
Keep going. I feel like I'll say this because I'll have to wrap up my process very soon, but I've been on OpenSea looking at his original meme drop, just thinking like, can I acquire anything that is Ralph Grassetti before Ralph Grassetti just goes to Jupiter and exits this globe, just like you on the moon, taking photos of the Earth.
Yeah, and again, countless other artists that I love. A great place to find my favorite artists is to go to allships.co. When I'm really in love with someone's art, it usually ends up on that site with a really long, I try to do these really long interviews and just like free-flowing conversations and stuff like that. So
is Ralph Grassetti on allships.co? No,
he's not. I'm too scared. I'm joking, but I should reach out to him, and I'm sure he'd be gracious enough to submit, you know, submit some work for us. But yeah, he's always been very, very, like, I've hit him up a few times just to be like, sir, like, you are ridiculous. And he's always gotten back to me, like, and you know, he's like one of those people that we don't, the era of like the separating the art from the artist and like having somebody who's like makes good art, but they're kind of just like not a good person. Like that era to me is completely done. Art is embedded with community now because of the way that we're all interconnected. And for somebody at his level to be so dynamic and responsive to his community is like, that's what success looks like now. And if you ignore it, you know, ignore it at your own peril. But
well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
And it's just a better way to live life. You get to meet so many cool people, and you know, one person can change your life forever.
We've seen that time and time again in the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's flip that question a little bit. Let's say the last chronologically artwork or artist that you saw and you said, why don't more people know about this work or this person?
Oh boy. I want to take this as an opportunity to shout out the Cuban NFT community. Because there's a bunch of artists in Cuba that against all odds are participating at a very high level in this community. I don't want to get his handle wrong, but Gabriel has been a leader in the space down there. I think it's Gabriel Bianchini, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But I'll send it to you for show notes or something.
Yeah, we'll get the handle. We'll put it in show notes.
Because it's important that we make sure that this is a system that works for all corners of the globe. And through the ALLSHIPS Artist Fund, I've been able to support 2 other artists down there, Irene and Octavio. I'll send you their pieces as well. And, you know, an Ethereum to me, you know, it helps me pay my rent and, you know, helps me continue to do what I'm doing with ALLSHIPS and everything like that. But there's other people in other situations where that money is like way more life-changing than it is for, you know, myself, who I have a career already. And, you know, I've been supported by my advertising work and commercial work up here in New York City. So I just want to make sure that when we celebrate the space and we celebrate the conversations, like we make sure that the love we show each other is like shown everywhere, and that we really use this as a tool to unlock new lives for people that never thought they could make it as a creative person. And like, I had to find that path. And now that I live a creative lifestyle, I can't imagine any other way. And my goal is to open that door, much like Silva opened the door for me in NFTs. Like, I want to be able to open the door to self-sovereignty for as many people as I can. And that's my mission as an artist and as the founder of ALLSHIPS as well.
It's a great mission, Dave. As we wrap here, tell people, I know allships.co obviously, but tell people where else can they find you for those who don't know.
I'm most active on Twitter, where I'm Dave_Krugman. You can also follow ALLSHIPS Co on Twitter for ALLSHIPS updates and stuff like that. Make sure to check out the ALLSHIPS podcast, the Discord. Both you can find up through the website. My biggest collection of photography and my living, breathing portfolio and my open journal is my Instagram account, which is Dave.Krugman, Krugman. My iPhone, you don't need to spend all your money on a camera account, is called Secret Street. And that'll be unfolding into a pretty deep collectible series eventually. And I guess that's probably it for me. Oh, and DaveKrugman.com. I have a bunch of press and interviews, and you can hear a lot more about my traditional photography career, where I do things like be in ads for Four Seasons. I shoot for Honda. I'm signed as a Sony ambassador, and I have like a much more like typical photo career going on the side as well. And I'm a global ambassador for Manfrotto as well, which it's a great brand partner to have for me and support my dreams to keep doing this.
You're not doing much on the whole. It's a good list.
Yeah. So yeah, check out my website too. And stories.davekrugman.com is like another journal site that I use to tell deeper stories around photography.
Yeah, I just have to say, I want to double down on the quality of individual you are. I mean, again, we've had a chance to spend a lot of time in person now, and the philosophy, I mean, it comes very naturally to you. You're deep, you're soulful, you're intelligent, you're beyond. And to go back to you representing that journey, the fact that you were able to show that kind of restraint when that stuff was happening, and not that anyone's wrong for doing it the other way, but the most important thing to me, and what I want to double down on, is the fact that you did it your way. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate so much about you. That's what's so apparent in ALLSHIPS.co. The brand, the craftsmanship, from saying all those things you appreciated growing up, and the fact that you can literally see them palpably in that brand right in front of you. And it just shows how much of yourself that you put into it. And so when I think of the people mentally, talent-wise, skill-wise, craft-wise, who are the best positioned in this space, you know, looking forward to drive it, to be part of the community, to build the community, you are one of those people, man. So I appreciate you very much.
Do other people cry at the end? That's so kind, Roger. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Just to close it off on my end, you are an absolute rock in this community. You are the glue that holds so much of this together. your encouragement of artists and your the way you allow us to tell our stories on in situations like this is so important that the space would not be possible without you as an individual. So I appreciate you. I'm honored to have had this conversation with you. And I want to trade you and invite you on the ALLSHIPS podcast as soon as we can get it done.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. And I'll be there anytime. We'll figure it out.
Much love, man. Thank you so
Dave
much.
Krugman, take care, my friend.